Just check this is already on. Yeah, it seems to be. And I've got the clicker. Hopefully our slides will come up shortly. I was told that I couldn't mess this up, which I see as a bit of a challenge, but we shall soon see. Thank you all so much for joining us in the room and online. I appreciate there's been a few technical issues, so thanks so much for bearing with us. Let's get the slides up. Okay, so Ishita and I are just going to run a very quick session today on the basics of social investment. So social investment kind of 101 on what it is, how it can be used to scale your business and increase the impact you are trying to create.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Ishita. I am the project manager of Good Finance. I also, alongside working at Good Finance, run a social enterprise working in the anti-racism space. I'm super excited to be with all of you here today. Welcome to mine and Annie's double act for this first session. You will also see me back here this afternoon for one of our panels. I will absolutely be joining the debates today, and I'm very happy to be challenged on anything. So come find me if you have a challenge for the social investment space.
Thanks very much, Ishita. And my name's Annie. I'm the Senior Communications and Digital Marketing Officer at Good Finance. I joined in the deep, dark depths of lockdown, so this is my first in-person event, so please do bear with me. I will try and slow it down. If I start talking too quickly, just give us a wave. Quick intro on Good Finance. Hopefully everyone knows what it is and kind of how you may have got here via Good Finance, but essentially we are an education platform for charities and social enterprises with the main aim to increase access to social investment and education on social investment.
All right, so before we get going this morning, and we are very excited about it because we've got quite the double act lined up for you, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. I'm going to be that person. We're going to get some energy into this room. So I'm going to ask all of you to stand up. All right, and then just try and make like a little bit of space around yourself. And when I say the number 1, you're going to clap. And when I say the number 2, you're going to jump. You ready? Yeah? 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so now when I see you say the number 3, you're going to meow. And when I say the number 4, you're going to woof. You ready? Yeah? 1, 2, 3. 4. 3. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Amazing. And now before I let you sit down, you're going to do one last thing for me. I want to get a sense of how comfortable you are with social investment before Annie and I start this morning. So if you are super comfortable, you know everything about it, put your hand way up here. And if you're kind of somewhere, you know a little bit, hand in the middle here. And if you've got no idea what social investment is, all the way down here. So give us a sense, everyone, with your hands of where you are. Okay, so some people comfortable, a lot in the middle. Okay, good, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for humoring me. You may sit back down. I promise you that's the only time today we're going to make you make animal noises. Okay, so first question that we get asked all the time is, what is social investment?
Thank you, Ishita. Great question. So we've got a very basic kind of definition on the slide there. So social investment as a form of repayable finance to help an organisation to achieve a social purpose, okay? So that is, in essence, what social investment is. It might be that you have a coffee shop which has an aim to help people get back into work, for example, and learn employment skills. Or you might be running a nursery, the profits of which are then put back into the community for parents with young children. And that is what social investment is. In terms of how it works, charities and social enterprises may generate a surplus in the activity that they do, and this surplus is then used to repay investors for the initial money that they have received. It's really, really important to note, and hopefully comes across in our very quick session, is that social investment is not the only way forward. It sits amongst a more complex toolbox, so it sits within your kind of toolkit for funding your organisation. So my question to you, Ishita, is what types of social investment are available and who provides that social investment?
Yeah, of course. So if we actually hop on to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the key types of social investment available. So this is a very simple way of explaining what is actually quite a complex tool. There are loads and loads of different types of social investment available. I have been working at Good Finance for 4 years, and I actually did a master's in social investment, and I couldn't tell you about every single type. So nobody is ever going to expect you to know all of the different types and forms. But what is really helpful to remember is that there are essentially two broad categories that most types of social investment fall into. So either they're debt, which is your classic taking on money, paying it back, usually with some interest, or there is equity, which is generally taking on money in exchange for a part of your organization or a part of your profits. You may also hear terms like blended finance or quasi-equity, which are just blends of the different types of tools coming together. So blended finance might mean that it's part grant that you don't have to pay back and part loan that you do have to pay back. And then in terms of where you get social investment from, again, this is quite a simple view of it because there are lots and lots of different places to get social investment from. But broadly, you can either get social investment from an organization or an individual. So when we talk about individuals, it might be things like crowdfunding or community shares. And when we talk about organizations, it might be a specialist type of lender or a bank or a trust or a foundation. So if we hop over to the next slide. In terms of who provides social investment, there's a bit of a spectrum of where that money can come from. So on one side, you will have sort of trusts and foundations whose kind of priority and purpose lies in their social mission and their social value that they're creating. And on the other side, you might have more traditional investors who are thinking about their financial return. There's a whole spectrum of organizations who will be balancing their social impact and their financial return that provide social investment. And there are lots of different types of providers, from kind of traditional banks, specialist banks, to trust and foundations. So that's just a broad sort of overview of where that money might be coming from. The next question, and one that we get asked all the time, is how much does social investment cost, and why isn't it cheaper if it's social?
Thank you. And yes, that is quite understandably one of the most popular questions that we get at our events. How much is the actual cost of social investment, both in terms of the general overall cost over the term of the loan, as well as what the monthly repayments might look like. So is that affordable for your organisation? The cost of capital is what we refer to the interest rate, essentially. So that's what it's known as. You might hear that kind of bounded around the place. The screen grab that we have in the middle is our cost of capital calculator. So I am just going to put a quick plug in here to a Good Finance tool. And essentially it allows you to put in how much you're looking to borrow, the term of that loan, what interest rate or cost of capital rate you are being offered, and any upfront fees that they are saying that they will charge you. And essentially, once you calculate that, that will give you an overall cost for how much that social investment will cost, as well as what the monthly repayments might look like. What's really key to note here is that while cost of capital is really, really important, and the kind of that number will depend on the social investor's appetite for risk, the loan term is also really important in considering how much that might cost your organisation in total. If it's social, why isn't it cheaper? And is it cheaper to borrow from a commercial lender? Those are questions that we also get all the time at the events that we run. And absolutely, it's a very valid point. It's really worth shopping around, checking out commercial lenders, banks, high street banks, and seeing what's out there before you kind of go forward with social investment as a viable option for you. I think one thing to note is that perhaps with social enterprise and charity in particular, social investors are more likely to take on that risk than perhaps a high street bank. So you might see a loan advertised at 2-3%, but it's always worth doing your homework and making sure that that's actually what it is in your case, because a lot of the time, as we spoke about earlier in terms of taking on risk, social investors are able to take on that risk. So the next question I have, which is also another one we get quite a lot, is why do social investors ask so many questions during the process, and is it worth it?
Yeah, of course. So if you're in the room, give me a hands up if you have ever applied for a grant before. And if you're watching online, tell us in the chat or give us an emoji if you've ever applied for a grant before. Yeah, okay, so quite a lot of you. So not dissimilar to grants. When you go through the process of taking on social investment, you will get asked questions from social investors, and there is a variety of reasons why they do this. So the due diligence process enables investors to gain a stronger and a better understanding of who your organisation is, what you do, how your business model works, the type of impact that you're making. And ultimately, that's a really important process for the investor to go on. One, to mitigate risk and really understand what they're investing into. But two, also for you to get to know the investor and what their goals and motivations and priorities are. When you are working with a social investor, more often than not, it's going to be a long-term relationship. So it's really important to go on that process with that investor and make sure that their goals are aligned and your goals are aligned, and everyone has a really clear understanding of what the investment is and what your organisation does and the impact that you're trying to grow with that investment. So we've talked a lot about what social investment is, but the next question is on how you actually go about finding it and applying, and this one's for Annie. So what do I need to think about when I am actually considering applying for social investment?
Great, thanks, Ishita. And yeah, as Ishita mentioned, so what do you actually want to think about before you go ahead and start this process? So the first one is purpose. What do you actually need the social investment for? What will you be spending that money on? Do you need it to buy an asset, which would perhaps bring your monthly rental payments down? Or do you need it to grow and innovate and perhaps pursue a different service that your organisation could offer? So what do you actually need that capital for is the first key thing that you need to think about. Next, we've got repayment. So what's really critical with social investment is that you have a means to pay back that loan. That's really important for you, but it's also really important for your investor who will be looking to kind of recycle that money and use it again to create more impact in the future. So do you have a trading income, essentially? Do you have activity planned that is likely to bring in enough money for you to repay that social investment? And finally, we have impact, which I'm sure is what gets everybody up in the morning, why many of you are here today. What impact are you trying to create? What will your services mean for the users that you serve? And what effect will that have on their lives every day, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? What is the impact of your organisation? There's lots more to think about before you kind of pursue social investment, but these are kind of the three broad categories that we have popped them into today. And the final question is, where can I go to find more information on social investment? And that was just a quick other plug for a fund mapper tool that we have on the Good Finance website. I'll happily share the link on the platform and around on the kind of social media later. So we have a tool with over 150 social investors and advisors that you can visit to find social investment. So, oh, sorry.
Can you take... Oh, sorry.
Over to you, Ishita.
Oh, thanks, Annie. So yeah, as Annie just said, do check out the Fund Mapper tool. Interesting fact about the Fund Mapper tool is that there are, I think, about 90-something social investors on there. And a couple of years ago, we did a bit of due diligence on the social investors. And we found that 85% of the social investors on the directory were themselves registered social enterprises or charities, which I always think is a really interesting thing to know about social investors in the UK, is that social mission and that social impact is actually really core to what they're doing as well. So we will take you through our top 7 lessons learned. So over the years, we have spoken to lots and lots of people that have been there, done it, and actually taken on social investment. And these are our key learnings from those conversations, what people who have been there and done it have told us. So number 1, social investment is not benevolent money, and that's a really important thing to remember. So unlike grant money, most of the time you do have to pay it back, and you may have to pay that back over a period of years, and more often than not, it will be with some interest. And so it's really important that when you're considering social investment, you also consider what your income streams are and how you would realistically pay that back over time. But really important to remember, it's not benevolent money, and it is one of the tools in your toolkit. So it's not going to be right all the time, but there might be instances where that is the most appropriate tool.
Great. And number 2 is impact matters. So that kind of draws upon what I was just speaking about, but impact matters to you and your organisation, but it also matters to your social investor, and they don't have they're not just focusing on financial return, they're focusing also on the impact and the outcomes of your organisation and the activities that you operate in.
Number 3 is that it is about much, much more than money. So social investors build long-term relationships with the organizations that they are investing into. And something that we hear from our users and organizations that we speak to at Good Finance all the time is about how that relationship is actually much more than money. We've had stories about investors that have helped organizations with their financial modeling or their impact management. We've heard stories about, social investors that have gone on to build really long-term relationships with the organizations that they invest into. And I think that's always worth keeping in mind as well, is that it is actually about much more than just the money.
And number 4 is honesty is always the best policy, perhaps in every walk of life, but particularly so with social investment and the relationship that you have with your social investor. If you're struggling to make repayments or you have any kind of concerns about the future and the kind of the direction in which your organisation is going, it's always worth picking up the phone and giving your social investor a call. It's important to remember you're on the same team. They really want you to succeed as well, and they will always be there to listen, offer guidance, and if they can't offer the support that you're after, 9 times out of 10, they'll be able to point you in the direction of someone who can.
Number 5 is, why isn't it cheaper if it's social? And this, to be honest, is one of the questions that we get asked all the time. And Annie's already plugged it once this morning, but I really would recommend the cost of capital calculator tool if you are actively considering social investment. But one of the reasons why it isn't cheaper and there is an interest rate is because, unlike grant money, it is not a finite pot of money. If you pay back your social investment, firstly, it allows investors to carry on doing what they're doing and invest into other organisations over the years. And secondly, an investor needs to be able to balance and mitigate the risk that they're taking by investing into your organisation. Quite often, we will see organisations consider mainstream loans as well, and we absolutely say do all of your research, and if that's a cheaper option, then absolutely go for it. But something that we see as well is that quite often the mainstream sort of organisations and lenders won't invest into social enterprises and charities. So sometimes social investors are investing into things that can't get that investment elsewhere, and they need to be able to balance that risk.
And number 6 is due diligence isn't fun, but it does make your business better. So I think Team Good Finance, throughout the 5 years that we've been operating, have only found one person that enjoyed the due diligence process. I believe a woman based in Nottingham, each to their own. Everyone else finds it very difficult, very time consuming. But the whole point of due diligence is that it does make your business better. You're stress testing your model and you're proving your concept to your social investor. They really want you to succeed as well, and they will ask all the difficult questions that hopefully you have the answers to, but it might take some time to prepare for, but it really, really is well worth doing and will make you feel a lot more confident in your organisation moving forward.
And last but not least, like very many good things in life, it always takes longer than you think. So start looking for social investment long before you think you might need that investment to hit your bank account. Is something that we hear from people over and over again. The process of actually finding the right investor, securing the right investor, going through the due diligence process, it does take time. So definitely start considering it before you think you might actually need it. Yeah. I think that's it. That's a wrap from mine and Annie's double act.
Don't run off yet. Thank you so much, both of you, for that run through. We've got lots of time for questions. There's a couple on Slido. And actually, one of them, I think, is what's the top 3 sort of top tips in terms of ways people can take investment. I'm not going to ask you to answer that just yet, but I am going to do one of my, they're probably prepared for this, putting people on the spot. So if you are a social investor in the room, give us a wave. We are. Some over there, some over here. Matt, put your hand up. You're not getting away without that. Yeah. So if you want to go and ask the social investors, they're probably the best people to ask that question of, and we do hope that you will do that. There was one other question on Slido. What are the biggest barriers to taking on investment? That's a really good question. Have we got anybody in the room who's actually taken on investment themselves? So far. Yes. Okay. Over here. Yes. A few over here. Asan, I've taken on investment a long time ago as well. So, okay, I'll perhaps come and find you in the break and let's see what your experience of the biggest barriers are, and we'll come back with that one. I think that was a really good run through. Thank you. Great double act there. And also, I think it's really important to say that Good Finance is essentially a web platform. When it was launched 5 years ago, if you'd have asked me, and particularly after the pandemic, that as we come towards the end of this year, we will be almost at 500,000 unique users, I probably never thought there would be the appetite or interest in money you have to pay back with interest. And what's really interesting is how many people are actually working out how it can help and create and scale impact. Anyway, enough from us. You now know who the investors in the room are. We're going to come back with barriers, but you'll be really pleased to know now we're over for coffee and a break. And all of the rest of the panels will have plenty of time for questions. Thank you.